Welcome to the Two Beans in a Pod by Haley and Jamie. Today, we're diving into a story that, well, it just keeps unfolding, doesn't it? The ongoing fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein files. It's created this huge ripple effect. And right at the center of it all, there's this big question hanging over a key figure. Should FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino resign? Our mission today really is to unpack all the different sources we've looked at, everything from social media buzz to, detailed news reports. We want to help you make sense of the conflicting stories, who the main players are, and what it all means for the bigger picture. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, how fast public feeling can just run headlong into the official story. So rewind to July 7th, 2025. The Department of Justice and the FBI, they released this memo. And the goal pretty clearly was to sort of close the book on the Jeffrey Epstein case. The memo stated quite clearly no evidence of a client list, the powerful men supposedly involved in Epstein's trafficking ring. And it doubled down on the idea that Epstein died by suicide in his jail cell back in August 2019.
Okay, so the official line, suicide. What was the main proof they offered in the memo, and what was the immediate detail that, got people talking and raising eyebrows?
Well, the proof, or the evidence presented for suicide, was a link to about 11 hours of footage from Epstein's cell. But here's the kicker, the bit that instantly complicated things for a lot of people. Roughly a minute of that footage reported missing.
Okay, just a minute, but in this context. Yeah. So what was the public reaction? You mentioned the clash. Our sources point to a really strong backlash, right? Especially from the MAGA base, conservative voices online, like on X.
Oh, absolutely. You saw what sources are calling significant frustration, almost instantly. And that frustration quickly turned into accusations. Cover up, lots of calls for transparency. Hashtags just exploded. Hashtag Epstein cover up, hashtag Epstein files. It really reflected this deep feeling that the Trump administration's DOJ was, I guess, downplaying the whole thing. Like they were saying nothing to see here, even though many people expected, more.
Right. And the core of that anger, reading between the lines of our sources, seems to be about expectations versus reality. These, quote, big promises that had been made to the president's base about huge revelations in the Epstein files. This memo just didn't deliver on that, did it? It left those promises feeling empty for many.
Exactly. It created this massive gap. People felt let down.
If we step back for a second, what does this immediate reaction tell us about how official information lands or doesn't land in today's world?
It's more than just politics, I think. It really shows this kind of narrative inertia. You have these really strong public beliefs, often amplified in online bubbles, and they just resist official findings, even from agencies people might normally trust. It shows how one small detail, like that missing minute of tape, can become this huge symbol that overshadows everything else, whether it's actually relevant to the main finding or not. It highlights how information, or even just the idea of hidden information, is such a powerful force in shaping public trust or distrust.
That's a really important point. Okay, let's pivot to the man at the center of that resignation question. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. A lot of you listening will know him from his past life, right? Popular podcaster, big MGA influencer. But what's really critical here is what he used to say about the Epstein case before he joined the FBI. How does that history frame where he is now?
Yeah, his past stance is absolutely central to understanding the current mess. Before the FBI job, Bongino was, he repeatedly raised alarm over Epstein's client list. He'd say things like, there's a reason they're hiding it, and that releasing it would, quote, rock the political world. He was really invested in that narrative.
Okay, so given that history, what are the sources telling us about why he was reportedly so angry and raged, even during that closed-door White House meeting on July 12th when they were discussing the DOJ's review?
Right, multiple sources use that word, outraged. Now, there's a bit of disagreement on the details. One person apparently disputed that he actually raised his voice at the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. But even that source agreed Bongino was definitely enraged. And the reports also say he exchanged heated words with Attorney General Pam Bondi in that same meeting. It sounds like a very tense situation. And the reason for the anger? It seems to boil down to the Epstein memo rollout itself and what he saw as Bondi's, quote, lack of transparency from the start.
Wow. And the immediate fallout from that meeting was pretty dramatic, wasn't it? What happened next that got everyone buzzing?
Yeah, the word is, according to one source, Bongino did not come to work on Friday, July 11th. Apparently, he was that upset.
Yeah.
And that absence immediately fueled these widespread reports that he was seriously considering resigning from the FBI. It definitely signaled some deep unhappiness inside the Bureau, or at least from him, about how this whole memo situation was handled.
Okay, we're digging into some really complex layers here. The clash between official stories and public belief, the internal tensions. If you're finding this breakdown helpful for navigating it all, please do take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to Two Beans in a Pod. It really helps us keep bringing these deep dives your way. So, we have Bongino reportedly furious, maybe thinking about resigning. How did the other big players react? The president, others in leadership, how did they try to manage this?
Well, President Trump stepped in publicly on July 13th, tried to smooth it over, basically. He called Bongino a good guy. He said, I think he's in good shape after claiming he'd spoken with him, trying to pour cold water on the resignation rumors.
Right, the classic reassurance play.
Exactly. And then you had FBI Director Kash Patel tweeting the day before, on the 12th, saying the conspiracy theories just aren't true, never have been, and reinforcing his loyalty to the Trump administration. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche also chimed in, saying any idea of daylight, disagreement between the FBI and DOJ leadership on the memo was patently false. So a very coordinated effort to present a united front.
But despite those official statements, this whole episode seems to have triggered something else, what's being called an unprecedented loyalty test. But within the MAGA movement itself, what's happening
It
there?
really has. It's fascinating because many of Trump's most dedicated supporters are, not taking cues from its leader on this one. They're not just falling in line behind the official statements, which is pretty unusual for that base. It suggests a real split between what the base expected or demanded and what the administration actually delivered with this memo.
And Attorney General Pam Bondi seems to be catching most of the heat for that, right? Bearing the brunt of the frustration from MAGA world. Why her specifically? What are people saying?
Yeah, she's definitely become the focal point. And a big part of it is her own past statements. She had apparently repeatedly promised to release Epstein documents. There's even one reported instance where she claimed a client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now.
Oh, that's specific.
Very. So now you have critics like Megyn Kelly calling Bondi the villain in this story, and someone like GOP rep Anna Paulina Luna issuing a pretty stark warning. Pam, if you can't do your job, we'll find someone who will. The anger seems rooted in that feeling of broken promises, that the memo didn't match up with what they thought was coming.
So even with that kind of criticism coming from within his own base, how has President Trump reacted towards Bondi? And what's his broader strategy to try and calm things down?
Well, publicly, Trump has defended Bondi quite strongly, praised her for doing a fantastic job. That was in all caps, apparently. And he made this appeal for unity, saying, we're on one team, MAGG, and I don't like what's happening. There are also reports he privately called some of Bondi's loudest critics, trying to, stem the bleeding, manage the fallout behind the scenes.
And has he tried his usual deflection tactics as well?
It seems so. He's fallen back on his familiar playbook, questioning why the radical left lunatics, his words, hadn't released the files if they were so damaging. And also trying to downplay the whole thing, saying Epstein is somebody that nobody cares about.
Trying to change the subject, essentially.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But the discontent is clearly still simmering. You saw that at the recent Turning Point USA event. Laura Ingraham asked the student crowd if they were satisfied with the Epstein investigation results, and she got hit with overwhelming boos. It really underscores that disconnect between the official line and what a significant part of the base feels.
Which brings us right back to Dan Bongino and the central question, should he resign? You've got, on one side, his very public past championing this idea of a hidden client list, saying it would rock the political world. Okay. That stands in pretty stark contrast to the official memo he was reportedly enraged by, and him apparently considering quitting over it. What's the argument on the other side?
Well, the counterpoint is, first you have the president publicly backing him, saying he's in good shape, and then you have those statements from other top officials, Patel, Blanche, insisting there's no daylight, no real conflict between FBI and DOJ leadership on this. They're pushing back hard against the idea of internal division, emphasizing unity and process. So yeah, Bongino's caught right in the middle, between his own past statements and public persona and the official position of the administration he now serves. Plus, you have the pressure from his supporters who likely agreed with his old stance and pressure from superiors wanting a unified message. It's a classic rock at a hard place situation. Personal belief versus institutional loyalty.
Yeah, it really throws a spotlight on those tensions, doesn't it? Transparency, accountability, political loyalty, especially in these really high-stakes government jobs, makes you think about how personal convictions might clash with official directives, particularly on something like the Epstein case that has gripped public attention for so long. Looking at how this is playing out, what does it really tell us about the power of a narrative, even when faced with official statements?
I mean, this whole situation goes beyond just the Epstein files, right? It's almost a perfect case study of how that information gap, the space between the official story and what the public believes or wants to believe, can become, well, almost weaponized. It creates this intense loyalty test, forcing people, even high-up officials, to pick a side, the institution or their public image, maybe even their past self. And it makes you wonder, in this hyper-polarized time we're in, is truth itself becoming just another partisan battleground? And what does that do for public trust in institutions down the line?
So as we wrap this up, what are the key takeaways for you listening to all this and trying to make sense of this really complex information landscape?
I think the biggest thing is seeing how this ongoing Epstein fallout, especially the drama around someone like Dan Bongino, really highlights a massive challenge we all face now. How do we, as a society, square these deeply held public expectations, these narratives that have built up over years, with official findings? Especially when those findings just don't match what many people hoped for or frankly believed was the truth.
Yeah, and maybe leave you with this thought. How does even the perception of secrecy or the sight of these internal struggles inside powerful agencies affect public trust? Does it matter what the actual facts are if the trust isn't there? It's a question that definitely echoes far beyond just this one story.
Absolutely. And look, if this discussion helped you cut through some of the noise today, if you found this deep dive valuable in understanding these complex dynamics, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe. Your support honestly makes a huge difference and lets us keep bringing these kinds of detailed analyses straight to you.
Thank you for listening to Two Beans in a Pod.